Hello, Gayle. I watched your CC6 and really good. Similar to CC5, and that's on me because I didn't get that one back in time. But if you can, I know you said you had quite a few videos recorded, but if it's another one with Lucas, I would wait until you're able to implement the feedback from 5 and 6 and record another one and send that to me. And if for some reason you're unable to do that before the next submission, just let me know and I can give you some extension or whatever. Again, great reflection. I love that you're including more content. Great camera placement. Awesome pokes. Loving the prompts. And what else? Again, just a reminder not to touch his hand in between the pokes. If anything, again, push him back from the table a little bit more. Really prompt pulling that elbow back. You could even say, hand on your lap in between pokes. And then also try and keep that board down instead of lifting up, whether or not the poke was accurate or mispoke. Because, whenever they're mispoking, it's mostly just because we have to adjust our ways that we're supporting him. And then again, too, instead of kind of that physical touch, I would just really up the gestural and give him that, peripheral motion or up, down, around of where he should be going. And I forget, did you ever start with covering half the boards with him? He is pretty accurate, but because of he's having the mispoke, sometimes it's easier even if you just start the lesson covering half the board, the first 5 questions, and just giving him that confidence and the opportunity to really have those first few words be super successful. When he's spelling 2 words like Staten Island, he'd finish Staten, and then I would say, okay, Staten and second word, go. And then again, in the previous video, but nothing is all on me, I'm just repeating it. Once you've done those few spells in the beginning, then just do greens for the rest. And again, too, if he is mispoking, it's not because he doesn't remember the word. I think when he was doing champagne, it's just because he needs a little more support. So instead of repeating the word or the question, just think of other ways that you can prompt and get his eyes down and do more of the gestural and all of that. And then, great job with trying to coach his body back to the table. It seemed like he had a pretty cool, I think one of those kind of spin engagers. And at one point, you were helping support him or coach him, and instead of saying oh, turn it and it'll fit, then think about how you can break down those steps more for his apraxic body. So all right, Lucas, I see you want to finish this screw or whatever it was. I'm gonna help you with that. Let's reach out to it, get a nice grip, pinch it. You're gonna rotate it towards me, or clockwise or counterclockwise. And then once he's, give him a little bit of wait time, and if he's able to rotate it, then say, okay, now push down. So yeah, just always think of those many steps that come into play with our spellers that, we think are just as simple as, oh, turn it and that's it. But you want to think about how you can break it down into as many steps as possible, which I think your motor analysis task thing assignments coming up soon, so you'll hear a little bit more on that. And that's it for my notes, but overall amazing. Let me see your notes. Yes, your prompts have tremendously improved, so good job for noticing that. Yep, 3 boards are going well. And yeah, I don't think I heard the word no once, which is great. Sometimes though, you have the 3 boards on your lap, and sometimes I recommend putting them on the table just for when you are trying to do more gestural. I seem to knock them off my lap sometimes. And then also, I think at one point too, you were saying like, let's see, instead of saying like, oh, if this will be a distraction, I'll have to remove it, then just, you know, again, remind yourself that he's impulsive, he does want to be there, he does want to be still, he wants to be spelling, but also with that impulsive body, like whether or not he wants to grab it in that moment, he might go for it. So I would just maybe say like, hey, I'm just going to place it behind me or on the floor, hopefully out of sight, out of mind, and then as soon as we're done spelling, you'll get it back on the table. Yeah, I love that you mentioned not to spell for too long. I said that in my last one, so good job. And even you mentioned the physical prompts. This is all great. And yes, so you might get bored with some of those spell words and things, but I would stick with him more on the 3s until he's super duper accurate and you've had a good 35-40 minutes of very little mispokes, very little prompting, very little resets, and then that's when you would move to the 26 board. So you still have a little ways to go, but that's totally fine and normal. Good idea, practicing some motor at the beginning. And yeah, your question about the physical guidance. Ideally, you know, we really don't encourage that. That's one of the differences between S2C and FC, the facilitated communication. I have had a couple really, really young clients that I might have given the slightest pressure here, and that enables them to be able to get to the letter for whatever reason. But yeah, that's more FC. So you want to try figuring out other ways to reset that hand and get it to the right area with, you know, those directional prompts and the gestural and all that. And yes, coaching the eyes was great. Always remember, typically whenever they're mispoking, it's because their eyes aren't anywhere. So you got his eyes ready, you told him to scan, you told him to look for it, you know, keep the eyes on the board. You're doing great. And so yeah, I would stay away from the 26 for a little bit, and then even once you start on the 26, just like with the 3s, you know, you're gonna start back at the spells, heavy prompting, and then greens, and then again some pretty good prompting, and then once you're not doing as much prompting with the greens on the 26, that's when you introduce those semi-opens. But if you're feeling that some of these questions might be boring him, then that's when you could, you know, up the ante with the type of lesson you're providing. You can give him something a little more cognitively engaging. I know he's 8, but you'd be surprised what some of my clients want to learn about and read about at 8. And then maybe you could even try, you know, sometimes some of the greens are fill in the blanks. One word, but you could modify them and say blank blank, like I'm just looking at the thing. So let's say that this sentence is Lucas' approximate years practicing S2C, and let's say that was a sentence from the chunk. And the green question was blank approximate years practicing S2C. But instead, if you want to kind of give him a little more of that practice and a little more of him having to think, you could say blank blank, years practicing S2C. What 2 words am I looking for? But yeah, I think that's it. Sorry for the ramble. Great job. Text me if you have any questions.